in English department at Ithaca College and one of the co-directors of the New Voices Festival. Thank you so much for being here. Our festival is celebrating its 10th year, which is a pretty extraordinary milestone, especially given that the last 2 years were completely remote festivals. 2 years ago, we had a whole lineup of authors with paid plane tickets and bus tickets, and it had to be all shut down midstream and turned into remote. But amazingly, the authors who came for those 2 years put on a really extraordinary festival, and I'll be forever grateful to them for doing it under such difficult circumstances. But it means so much to have our writers here in front of me today. It makes the 10th year anniversary all the more special that we're here in person together. And that all these wonderful students that you see with the fantastic t-shirts have gotten to really have the full festival experience of being in a classroom together, studying the works of the authors here today, and then getting to see the festival that they helped plan, design, put every logistical aspect into place come to fruition. So I'm so happy that our 10th anniversary is here, and specifically here in Buffalo Street Books, which has been our partner since the beginning. And Buffalo Street Books, for those of you who don't know, is a very special bookstore that is one of the few truly community-owned bookstores in the country. And so people own shares of the store, and it is truly one of Ithaca's great foundational spaces. We are always grateful to Buffalo Street Books, and we are newly grateful to the newest bookstore in town, Odyssey Books, which has been a wonderful partner to us this year and supported us in all kinds of ways. And what a treat to be supported by bookstores when you're a literary festival. It's a pretty special thing. We're also really grateful to Ithaca College, which has supported us from the beginning, and in particular to Claire Gleitman, who is the Dean of Humanities and Sciences and has been a great supporter of ours, but also until this year was the director of our play every year. She is now called to greater purposes in the college, and so she is not the director this year, but we have a wonderful new director who is herself a New Voices alum. And we are thankful, as always, to the town of Ithaca that supports us by loving literary events, by coming to the college and coming to the bookstores to support us. So you're going to hear about a ton of wonderful events that are going to be going on in the next few days. I hope that many of you will have a chance to come up to Ithaca College and see panels and readings there and to experience the festival aspect of this, which is to be together and to celebrate writers and their work. I want to make sure to tell you that this weekend there's a special thing happening here, and that is it's International Independent Bookstore Day, and it will be the beginning of a sale here. So come back. But today, purchase some books here. We have books by our writers here available for purchase after the readings. They might even sign your book as well. And for the first 3 people who purchase a book and come up and show me, you get one of the festival t-shirts. So a nice little bonus. But truly, one of the most special things about doing the festival for this decade has been getting to do it with one of my favorite writers, who is also a dear friend, and I want to welcome up Eleanor Henderson.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, everybody, for being here. I'm Eleanor Henderson. I'm the chair of the Department of Writing and co-director, co-conspirator for the last 10 years for New Voices. And it's really nice to see so many students and familiar faces and friends of the festival. And welcome to our writers who have just arrived in various vehicles to be with us on a somewhat frigid day in Ithaca. We really appreciate all the efforts that you've made to be here and the time that you're going to spend with our students. So just a little bit of background on The folks that you see in the blue shirts, they're part of the New Voices seminar, and so they have been reading the work of the authors. They have been preparing presentations, holding discussions, and writing introductions for our authors. So tonight you won't hear extensive introductions. We'll just have really brief intros to introduce each of our authors, who are going to be reading in this order, by the way. Liza Birkenmeier, Lauren Euler, who's going to be joining us via Zoom, Maya Phillips, Alexander Kleeman, Gina Nutt, Jen Chaplin, and Mona Awad. So we will give you your cue when it's your turn, authors. And you'll be hearing more extensive introductions at the next two readings, which are going to take place on Thursday and Friday, the next 2 days. So just a quick snapshot of what some of those events are going to look like. Tonight is 7 minutes, 7 authors. So you're going to hear just little pieces of the voices of each of our authors to give you a sort of preview of what's to come. And then we'll have more extensive readings the next couple of nights. I also have these handy little cheat sheet cards that we'll leave up at the register if you want to grab a schedule for the rest of the week. So we have 2 panels each day and a reading each evening, plus a performance. So tomorrow at 12:10 in Klingenstein Lounge on campus at Ithaca College, we'll have a panel called Narrating History and Rewriting the Future. 2:35, our panel is Lost and Found, Confronting Grief in Literature, then followed by a creative performance directed by our student creative director, Ioana Barjanidi, and then a reading at 6:30 featuring Mona, Maya, and Gina. That's all in Klingenstein Lounge tomorrow, except for the creative performance. And then Friday, we have a 12 o'clock panel called You and the Main Character, 2 o'clock, a panel called Drama Queens, Femme Fatales, and Final Girls, Performing Gender in Theater and Cinema. Reading at 5 o'clock in Clark Lounge, followed by the staged reading of Liza Birkenmeier's Dr. Ride's American Beach House. So this event and the final event might be my favorite ones because they are embedded in the Ithaca community and sandwiched in between are lots and lots of things to do on the Ithaca College campus. So with that, I will hand things over to our student director, Amoya, and Amoya and Abby will be introducing each of our authors briefly. And thank you so much to Amoya and Abby for all of your hard work. All of our students have worked so hard and can't believe that they're real life writers in the flesh here. Thank you, and Amoya. I forgot to
It's on the mic.
Thanks. Is it working?
Yeah. Hello everyone, thank you so much for being here. Our first author is Liza Birkenmeier. She's our playwright this year, and she wrote the play Dr. Ride's American Beach House, which covers themes of repressed sexuality in the 80s. It's a very cool play. But today, reading from Liza's work, Brief Hotel, we have Quinn Whitman and Isabella Basile, who are student actors. Welcome.
You could do it without.
Okay, we can do that. You can't hear us.
Do you feel better?
No, I'm really upset because I realized the whole thing is that I hate him.
Wait, why?
I was like, I'm trying to express my sexuality, even though I don't know what it is, or if it exists, as like some nameable part of my desires and my gender.
Yeah.
And maybe to me, those are the same thing, or at least circling each other. And I told him that. I told him I grew up thinking I was a pervert for having mundane sexual thoughts, so everything else, like, of course there was this Christian part of me that I cannot pull up that is completely fucking trapped in my subconscious that still has so much shame. Or like, if there's a Puritan living inside of me, how will I ever know what I want sexually?
If you've ever been like a little girl, desire is so
Right.
confusing.
Like, is this even my body? Is this pleasure?
I just spend so much energy trying to be desirable. That's not even
What even is that?
Right.
Instead of learning how to desire, we're trying to until I was basically 30, I was just trying to be desirable.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I was trying as hard as you were.
No, you have
But I
confidence.
get it. But anyway, I'm fucking furious. He was just like, okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Said okay.
When I was like, I have to explore everything, like sexually, I need to be completely sexually available to myself. Like,
Yeah,
he was like, okay.
that's great.
No! I fucking hate him. I've never hated him this much.
I get it actually.
Oh my god. I realized I've done something psychologically maybe sophisticated to myself where I hated him, but I was happy on not knowing that.
Holy shit, I'm so sorry.
No, the whole point is transgression, the fetish or whatever. Like, I don't know how you deal with your open relationship because when you communicate who you would like to fuck and then say it, like,
Yeah.
you just tell each other everything.
Yeah.
Everything?
Yeah.
Because isn't it, don't you just want to do something bad? Ever?
Yes. Yes.
I don't know what bad means, but.
There's nothing bad about desire, technically.
Right. I mean, I want to act out.
Parenting podcasts taught me so much about that.
Acting out.
Yeah, all the time. So helpful. But when I listen, I think of myself as the child.
You don't act out.
Yeah, but I want to. Of
You do?
course I do.
You do.
I mean, yeah. Of course I do.
That is actually so surprising, but I guess also who doesn't?
I mean, yeah.
We all want to act out. I want to act out. And now I'm thinking it's so insane that we get married to people and then we think our desires have to do with them. Like, even with you and Teresa, even if you're like, I'm gonna fuck someone else, you still have to tell each other. And it's like, why do you have to tell Teresa when you crave a
Milkshake?
Panda Express?
She knows that's my favorite restaurant. It's not a secret. They don't have them here. That's how deep in the middle of nowhere I am. 2 hours from a Panda Express.
But you don't have to tell her. You don't actually think that you're accountable to your wife for your desires.
Yeah, no.
So that's literally insane. Like, why do I have to talk about the kinds of sex I want to have with my husband? That's insane.
I don't think it's insane.
The way I said it may have just been my rough draft, but I think there's something in there that's completely correct.
Oh, the new Elena Ferrante is good. Do you want me to send it to you?
If I ever got bored enough to read, I probably wouldn't pick that.
There are actually so many good books.
I'm sure they're all
You read.
in extreme circumstances.
Sally Rooney is not an extreme circumstance.
You don't realize, you have no idea how depressed I had to be to sit that still.
I think it's kind of hot how you pretend you don't read.
Thank you.
I feel like everyone needs to tell me how much they read.
Yeah, I hate everyone.
I don't know what I mean by everyone because you're my only friend
That's not true.
since we moved.
Yeah.
You know what I hate about Teresa's job?
What? Oh my god, please say something mean.
I hate that it is good. I wish she was a
Jeff
tech girl.
Bezos.
I just don't feel like going to another one of her work events and being like, oh, I'm her wife. I've never done anything useful. I do not plan to.
I think you're a little fucking saint.
I think you don't realize that in the past 8 weeks of living here,
Except way more sexual.
thank you. In the past 8 weeks of living over 100 miles from a city, I am
If you can call it
useless.
that. It's not a field though, right?
My house?
Is there I don't know. Is there a downtown? Are you literally on a farm? I don't
No,
understand.
there's a downtown. There's a college in the downtown. I'm only 110 miles from
I know.
you.
Okay. Sometimes when you say middle of nowhere, I get concerned that you're using a septic tank and could die in a power outage or something. What? But the college is close to your house.
Yes.
Okay.
It's actually kind of cute.
Go see Aunt Bobby. She's 40 minutes from now.
You made that up.
She told me it was not fall and that you better not wait until it's emergency before you go see her and hang out with her and that you take it on the boat and all that. Whatever. They'll make Cole so happy.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for coming as well. That was great. My name is Abby McGuire. I'm the assistant director of the festival, just for California. I'm going to be introducing our next author who Eleanor is graciously setting up on the screen behind me. This is Lauren Euler. We're so glad to have her here with us over Zoom. She's currently in Berlin, which is super exciting. She's making time for us about 6 hours away. Lauren is the author of the novel Fake Accounts, which is about authenticity and conspiracy in the online world. It's a very interesting read. I highly encourage you to check it out. Here's Lauren.
Yes.
Great, okay. Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'm very sorry that I couldn't be in Ithaca. I was really looking forward to trying the new Cafe Duet among other things. But I'm very excited that it worked out. And I'm going to read from the middle of Fake Accounts, and hopefully it doesn't require any other explanation. At work on Monday, I told everyone who tried to make small talk with me that I had decided to go to the Women's March. I'm a good person now, I said, dispensing peanut butter M&Ms from the peanut butter M&M dispenser in the kitchen. I'm also eating a healthy breakfast. No one laughed except the intern, a long-nosed field hockey player, and the only person we interviewed who knew what the Village Voice was. She told me that studies show that people who talk about their goals are less likely to accomplish them than people who are humble and quiet, because talking about plans makes you feel like you've done something, and then you feel less like you need to do anything. I liked the intern. She was overfamiliar, as if unperturbed by the paranoia of social media or the precariousness of her position. She also had follow-through. I asked if she was trying to tell me that I wasn't humble and quiet, and when she said yes, I told her to do 20 push-ups. When she dropped in the middle of the aisle between our desks, only a couple of people noticed. They watched bemused for a few seconds before silently spinning back to their computers. If this had happened in the afternoon, the entire floor would have come over and cheered her on, phones in hand, live tweeting the event to trick themselves into thinking that because our office was cool, not like other offices, we were not really working, that being at work was in some ways actually more fun than being at home alone, or we would be streaming a TV show we pretended was good while eating delivery we pretended to afford. In the process, of course, we would also be advertising our website. We had free beer, but we weren't allowed to start drinking until 5 p.m., even though we often had to publish the first articles of the day from home while brushing our teeth and listening to podcasts hosted by other journalists, awestruck by the beautiful nuance of everything. At the office, mornings were spent in a trance, hunched over our laptops, scrolling through feeds, groggily yet frantically proofreading articles that had to go up before noon to optimize traffic, fielding annoying requests, and posting possibly original jokes and observations on Twitter as they materialized. We spent all day on the internet, and especially on Twitter, ostensibly looking for stories, but mainly just looking. Digital media was unionizing at the time, and a recurring joke in our meetings was that we should get the company to pay for addiction treatment. People were funny sometimes. Certain employees were bafflingly loud chewers or shouty phone interviewers, and they promoted camaraderie among the rest of us. Sometimes you would catch the eye of a coworker with whom you were G-chatting and share a look or a smirk, or ostentatiously cover your mouth to stifle your laughter. By the afternoon, these interactions would become less surreptitious, the disorientation of spending all day on the computer leading to outbursts that welcomely disrupted the forced calm of the open floor office plan. In this way, it was kind of fun. At push-up number 8, the intern asked if I was Instagramming her. I said no, I didn't want to get fired. She said she wanted me to post a video so that she could show off without having to show off herself. I said it would be feminist for her to post a video of herself doing push-ups, and maybe then she could become a fitness influencer and leave the media behind. By push-up number 20, we were late for a pitch meeting and she was very sweaty. I was a blogger, if that wasn't clear. I would have liked to claim a more dignified title like journalist or writer or critic or reporter, but I didn't because I didn't want to contribute to the rapid deterioration of those labels. I was hoping to one day claim them and scrape off some legitimacy for myself. My job was to write 2 to 3 articles per day about culture, which meant items about celebrities or suggestive studies or lately politics. And though that may seem like a lot, it quickly became totally doable, not so bad at all. You got used to it, and because I was often just rewording pieces other people had written and adding mean jokes, it wasn't particularly exhausting. Once I developed my tone, a rote pseudo-intellectual dismissiveness that could be applied to any topic so long as the worst political implications were spelled out by the end of the article. Ideally, the thing being discussed was bad for women. I wrote fast, and I accumulated a modest but respectable number of Twitter followers in the mid-4 figures. Although I didn't really feel I was doing something evil, I did feel that I was participating in a system that ran on panic and distraction, in which being stupid but not too stupid, prioritizing not quite the right things according to close but no cigar logic, was an asset. And perhaps because it was my job to detect the gravest possible outcome in any scenario, I couldn't deny that what I was doing was probably evil, even if I knew ultimately it wasn't. Office work generally requires emptying your mind so that all the dumb shit people tell you to do doesn't meet any obstacle on its way to smooth execution. Working in online media, you can be too listless or vapid because then you would bring scandal, virality on behalf of something widely agreed to be unethical and legal obligation upon the enterprise. Everything you said or did was probably meaningless, but also potentially hugely significant. The effect was that you were both neurotically catchy and quietly demoralized all the time, constantly justifying your acquiescence to stupidity as relatively minor and in service of a greater aim. Unfortunately, humility did not help that greater aim, which was to appeal to a youngish audience that assumed it was much smarter than it was, that wanted seemingly complicated arguments that conformed to its associative ideas about the world delivered very simply. It wanted to learn things that it could trick itself into believing that it had always known. So you had to write as if you were like everyone else, and as if everyone else were decently intelligent. The website, which millions of people read every month, had once been good. Now it had expanded its coverage so that it was, except for slight distinctions in the adjectives people used to describe it, indistinguishable from a suite of other websites that had also once been good. Facebook was widely understood to be responsible for all of this, and there was not that much more to say about it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lauren. That was wonderful.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks, Laura.
That's really right now. So next we have Maya Phillips, who is a poet and a critic, and this year's author of Eru, which is a beautiful poetry collection about marriage, love, and loss told through the lens of a traditional Greek epic. Yeah, it's very fascinating. So, welcome.
I'm just going to read a couple short poems from Eru. Ode to my father's failed heart. It's okay. I too have failed at the expected, have sputtered and choked like a rusty valve in water, have jumped into the pool only to sink. Little engine, your flawed machinery is nothing like love. You limp at last call to the dance floor, but feel no shame in your offbeat two-step, your 11th hour shuffle in a dead man's shoes. There's nothing left but the encore. So go ahead. Relax. unravel like a loosened knot. Overripe fruit in his chest, you blush with uncertainty, bruise yourself tender. Little heart, tiny treasure, sweetened to the point of spoil. Ode to my father's failed kidney. It's a question of impurity, like how a lie will live in the body years after it's told. But the body's its own remedy. It will always recover. Though if it's a question of purity, it's also a question of sanitation, isn't it? You're a type of spring cleaning. Here in the body, there's always something ready to bloom. Did you know if one acts quickly after a snake bite, they can suck the poison out of the wound? I lied when I said always. I lied when I said you could suck the poison out. After all, you would know best. The blood holds on to every infraction. Even poison, once given, is a gift. Oh, snaps. Yeah. It's been a while since I've gotten snaps. Sometimes my father is a roaming hunger, which is to say, sometimes he's the locust swarming the front door, or the stray scratching at the window at night. He is what looks for its fill, the empty chamber of evening, my father, who drinks the grit at the bottom of each glass, devours every morsel in might. Untidy he is. We are, in hosting the remnants, feasting the spoiled. When he is the appetite that outlives him, my father eats himself out of the grave, dines on the neighborhood, chews our house down to its bones. Okay, 2 more. I'll do this one because the weather is very strange here. It was so sunny in Brooklyn too. I gotta say.
Tomorrow, probably.
This is called A Kind of Temperament. We're a stormy kind of people. My father reigned for days after his funeral. We, each of us, tempest our old world rage. In another age, we'd have been gods. But here we are in our mortgaged homes, rented apartments, in our leased cars, in our morning commutes. Here we are in our everyday spite and sorrow, in our lifetimes of fury. All our Sturm and Drang and nothing to show for it. We're human even on the worst days. When it rains, it pours, and we're caught in it too. Now I'm gonna end with my New York poem because I'm obnoxious. Rather my New York City poem. I remember that I'm still in New York, even though there's nature here. I live in Brooklyn, if you haven't guessed. This is called Losing His Cool. On Thursday nights, as the Lower East Side speaks with all of its mouths at once, the legions of 20-somethings marching up and down East Houston, the girls with cut-off tops and tiny doll purses and skirts that inch up their thighs, and the boys with necklines that dip down the chest and too tight jeans. My father feels all his years catch up to him at once, and the good old days pile up behind him like a stack of old photographs. So when a group of them, all speaking over each other, the girls absently swaying with the same wave of their hips, the boys bobbing coolly along the outskirts with nowhere to be, nothing but time, practically walk right through him. He wonders if he can steal time back. Comb up the high top fade till it tests the door frames, sport the black Adidas tracksuit and the matching kicks, tongue popped and spotless, that kind of fly. Can he steal it all back? Maybe if he grabs a shot at the crowded bar where the music numbs his ears into a wordless hum, if he goes to the indie art film where everything is a collage of sex and nothing, if he goes to the club packed with bodies that throng and pulse until he swears the beat is coming from inside his chest, is it? And the sweat everywhere like rain, but everywhere thirst and unending hunger. He just wants a bag of Doritos and a Coke for $1. Wants to be nudged by his buddies into a dive bar buzzed with life and women, just like they did when he was young and unstoppable, stupid without consequences, nothing to his name but a comb, some bus fare, and a whole lot of back talk. He just needs one more chance at this. At 19, in a bar on a Thursday night, to see the years fanned out before him like a hand of cards, the royal flush, the best of all possible futures, he in each one, still there, still living. Not for the fashion, or the cheap buzz, or even the cool, no. He'd trade his rest in peace, the forgiveness of the grave for this. To be unafraid, to be able to go into the night and return unscathed. Thank you.
It's always so lovely to hear people read their own work. So our next author is Alexandra Kleeman. Her novel, Something New Under the Sun, chronicles the disorientation and dehydration of a world in climate crisis. It was the first book that we read this semester, and I think it has influenced a lot of our conversations since. So we're pleased to welcome her here today. We affectionately call the book Snuts.
I like snuts.
Oh, it lost its thing.
So it's
Oh. Is that?
And then it needs to go on.
Hello, sorry, yeah, sometimes I'm a little bit quiet, especially with the mascot, so I thought this might be good. I'm going to read just a little slice or sliver of this book, and I'm going to choose kind of a weird part, just because one of the things I was most interested in is when you're writing about climate change, something that's so diffuse and so difficult to get a handle on, how do you show it? So I decided I needed to kind of take my camera on a journey away from one of the characters and let it wander across the landscape so you could see some of this distributed disaster that's unfolding. People are drinking synthetic water called water, and it's no good for you. So we're here with Cassie Carter, think Lindsay Lohan, and then we pan out. At the bottom of a dry swimming pool in the hills north of Malibu, Cassie Carter wakes from a shallow sleep, wincing into the sun. She reaches up, her face tender and warm, but not burnt. An inflatable pool float in the shape of a flamingo squeals softly beneath her tan, angular little body. In other backyards all over this gated community, cerulean swimming pools are filled to the brim with thick, cold, bluish water, piped in from tankers and endlessly refilled from cisterns in the basement, so that the slow, thick liquid will slosh unceasing against the tiled rims of aqua-colored rectangles. A man with a brown, chiseled face pulls his polo shirt over his head, revealing a body covered in snowy white twists of hair. Children splash one another near the pool steps as fat, panicked bumblebees drown in the deep end. But Cassie's pool is a vacant hole, hard-sided and dangerous, slopes and nothing that falls in stands a chance of getting out on its own. She's woken up to find rain geese resting, head under the wing, in an inch of standing water, remnant of last week's rain, and baby squirrels trapped and dehydrated, concealing their small bodies under a scattering of dead leaf mold. Despite all this, she likes the empty pool. The swimming pool was the first thing she told June she was going to buy for them, the day she signed the contract for Camp You with Joanna. It was what her first manager would have had what her first manager would have called sentimental value. Like the hand-painted good luck sneakers June made for her before that first big movie audition. As long as she stays in the shallower end, where the faded turquoise paint still clings to the walls, there are fewer puddles and fewer dead bugs. 15 minutes away, the entire left side of the mountain is engulfed in flames, the smoke rising straight into the air like a tower, like a signal received by no one. Far from any major road, the witnesses are small-bodied, furry, or scaled, their eyes close to the ground. Their tiny limbs carry them through the underbrush as they look for a hole or hollow, a place to wait out the burning, or an unburned place where the air still slips easily into the lungs. In the midday sky, islands of pale blue are visible between the moving, shifting layers of smoke. A dark bird cuts through the shimmering air and disappears. Where the fire has already passed, the ground is burning. Small licks of flame rise from the blackened earth, flickering like birthday candles. An orange color creeps through, fading in and out with a pulsing rhythm. The low, earthbound fire moves like liquid across the terrain, some bright alien liquid climbing hills and tree trunks, flowing upward from the burly base of a coyote bush to hug its slender branches, heating the small, tough, delicately toothed leaves until they bloom with flame. At the fire's hot, live edge, the flames roar up to touch the unsinged tips of grasses. Fresh matter burns brightest, surging and sinking, the sound of the burn, the dull roar, like hunger in the belly of a man who's walked all day. An observer would see intelligence in the way it crawls, seeking new substance to consume, the way it moves in small, tidy increments and sudden leaps. The way it seems to head for the homes, for the cars, for the firefighters standing watch with masks on to filter their air. At the highway's periphery, a helicopter passes overhead. It drops a sheet of water on a fence of fire. Where the liquid smolders, steam rises, still hot enough to burn the skin off a hand. The vapor rises from blistered dirt. It billows and folds and curls over itself like a body protecting its soft underside. With its frail, opalescent blue tint, it is more beautiful than it should be. If it were ordinary, we would not stop to watch it. But it drifts like a dream on the hot wind, a gauzy shadow passing across the unburnt scrub, changing shape from cloud to mist, casting its almost imperceptible blueness on the unburned oaks. By the time the vapor reaches Cassidy Carter's 7-bedroom home, its bluish tint has nearly vanished. Traces have settled in the shriveled brown leaves of her dead rose bushes on the flagstones surrounding the red clay badminton court. Neither Cassidy nor Patrick senses the presence of an unfamiliar substance in the air as they stand in the expansive backyard, staring down into the empty turquoise-painted depths of the defunct pool. But out in the canyon lands where the fire ranges on, nobody is around to notice that not everything is burning. Though the blaze blackens the grasses and trees and chaparral scrubs equally, there are some plants still standing oddly unscathed, small clusters of ground-hugging green vivid against the ash. Leaf-like clover and sprouting tiny pale blue flowers, they resemble other species at the margins of the trail, and yet they are not any of those species. They have no name, no genus. They stir infinitesimally in the wind. When the flames pass over the small blue flowers, they do not singe. In the clearing smoke, they remain sweetly blue, the color of adolescent sadness. If you plucked one and held it up to the flame of a match, it would not catch fire. It would stare back at you with unchanged, soft blue against the enveloping heat. It would stare and stare until suddenly the sharp blue edges of its petals began to melt. Thank you.
That was so beautiful, thank you. Our next reading is from Gina Nutt, who is the author of Night Rooms. Night Rooms is an essay collection that dives into feminist horror and the grief in literature. Please welcome Gina.
Thank you so much. Can everyone hear me? All right, cool. So, true to form, I started as a poet. Night Rooms is an essay collection, and tonight I'm going to read you a short story called Sugar Waffle. So, ever a shapeshifter. He wants to watch pigs with celebrity silvertips round a track to classic rock. She wants to pet sheep and add buildings. They buy a sausage and split it and decide they'll go for tapas after the fair. Upstate Sparkle, he says, we'll wash it down. They look for the sheep, they look for the pigs. They find bleachers beside an above-ground pool. People file up steps and sit on silvery benches. House music bounces off the water. Handlers in polo shirts and khaki shorts lead dogs onto the deck. The handlers slide in the pool. They tempt the dogs with toys and gestures. A retriever dives through a hoop. A pug swims zigzag around posts. A woman in gold performs on a trapeze that rises from the water, lifting higher as she air dances. Dogs tread a circle beneath the woman in gold. He slouches and she nods into his chin. They climb down the bleachers, and she notices a trailer and tent with cages inside, dogs, too shaggy and damp, towels draped over their backs. He rubs her back and says, "Let's get you a sugar waffle." Crowds and litter humidify the walkways. She clumps beside him, purse strap clutched up her shoulder. She attended each year in her youth. She wanted to come back. He has exact change for the waffle. A woman in the window takes the money and wipes hair from her forehead with a bent wrist. "The fryers need a minute," she says. "The power went out and came back. The waffles won't puff right if the oil's not hot." She leans her head against the trailer, and painted sprinkles dance around teal words. He stands close before her face and asks if he feels okay. The woman in the window passes a puff of bakery tissue through. He tips $2, she eats half. He carries the rest and offers the bitten edge. Trash floods the nearest can. They find one less full by some restrooms. She didn't have to go until she saw the wine. He asks if he should get ride tickets. "I feel like a perv waiting with you." "That's a pervy thing to say," she says. He buys the tickets and sits on a curb near an unmoving stand. Someone in a hunting store shirt asks if she's ready. The shirt has a fish on it with a wide open mouth. "Wake up," the person says. She doesn't want to. The stall door is smudged and written on. She locks it and breathes in her hand. Wine slushy and sausage smells fill her palm. A yellow rubber shoe peers below the partition. A voice says, "Hey, neighbor." The bathroom smells like bleach and sawdust, scratchy paper towels, thin back tissue. The crowd has tripled since morning. He can't see where she stands. She could run off elsewhere without him. She could live another life. He thinks of swift exits, fractures and feeling. Then she's before him. They wander the midway. Sideshow tents promise the attractions are real and alive. He shells out and loses on balloon darts. The person who puts money in an apron pocket looks at her like, "I've given you the big one." She doesn't want the big one. Sugar waffles sweet on the corners of her mouth, a stickiness she tries to pat from her fingers with a frayed napkin. Each time he throws, she winces at the colorful bursts. The man in the apron discounts the darts and gives them more tries than the sign says they get for their money. More than a prize, she wants to feel he tried for her. A swell. Lonely, she used to think toted through buildings. A quarter across the counter, cold milk on her tongue. She drifted, her parents' hands around her small wrists. She longed to press her face into someone else's and scream down a track because they couldn't stop. He wins her a tie-dye zebra. She pets the purple yarn mane and thanks the man with the apron, who tells her, "Thank Daddy," and she does. "Now give him a hug," the man in the apron says, and nods at their hip-to-hip embrace. Their seams have that stitching. She did not notice until she did. Older said something about them both. None of it made as much sense to her as the first meal they shared. Palm flat over a votive flame, her silver bracelet warm, burned her wrist. The lights too dim to see the plates. They shadows. "Rome, your heart goes there," she sang in the shower. He thought she sang Rose. He thought she heard it in the movie. He asked, and she scrunched her face. "It's just something I think of when I wake up." They sheared each other from dullness. How does it work, he wanted to know. They were in the kitchen. She looked up from her crossword and said, like this. She meant that part. He knew she meant how else when she resumed penning in a 6-letter word for cat. The spider lady in her tent says, I had a daughter with 2 legs. How does that happen? The spider lady says it tough and cracking. 8 high heels and 4 pairs of black pumps with gold insoles on the ground beneath the stretched web. He reaches for her hand. She looks at her 2 feet in sandals, sawdust shreds on her toes. People fill the tent. Someone wants to know how the spider lady cooks dinner. I don't, the spider lady says. I catch it and that's all. Outside, visible wideness. That felt weird. I didn't like it, she says. No hands under the table, no dim hallways down which they can disappear. Want makes a room and they've left. Faces over tea light, elbows on the dented copper table. The person who takes their order describes the taco special and explains how many pieces each appetizer includes. She dislikes when he does this, asks how much for how much. When she suggested the fare, he said, it's not that everything's expensive, it's that we'll smell sausage for days, even if we don't eat any. She dropped her legs around his waist and said, we should go. Thank you.
Our next author is Jen Shefflin. She flew all the way from Santa Fe to be with us this week, so very good. Her book, my autobiography of Carson McCullers, ushers readers through the past and present of queer authorship. It also yielded a lot of rich discussion in our class. So.
Thanks so much for having all of us and for getting me here from Santa Fe, which is no easy feat. I'm just going to go ahead and read from the beginning of the book. Question. Reeves asked Carson if she was a lesbian on the front porch of Carson's house on Stark Avenue after everyone had gone to sleep. I picture them on a swing, though I know for a fact that no such swing exists. Carson answered with a swift denial, wished aloud that she wasn't one, and then expressed plain uncertainty. I was the only patron in a small university archive in Columbus, Georgia, when I came across this exchange in a typed transcript dated March 1958. The transcript records Carson's 5th therapy session with Dr. Mary Mercer, whom she visited for help with writer's block. I read the question again. In her recollection, Carson told Reeves that she had loved a woman named Vera, another named Mary Tucker, but she said she wasn't sure what he referred to when he said lesbians. She asked him, as though lesbians might be a club she could consider joining, or an unfamiliar species she might study. How do lesbians behave? Where do they live? How do they interact? Despite Carson's status as maybe lesbian, Reeves asked Carson when they would be married. She was 19. Articulation. Carson McCullers, when she is remembered as a novelist who grew up in Columbus, Georgia, moved to New York in her 20s, and spent the rest of her life writing about misfits in the American South. Her characters are mute, or too tall, or black, or queer, and almost always lonely and out of place in a conservative small town that looks a lot like her own. In 1940, her first novel, The Heart is a Lonely Hunter, brought her fame at 23. Her books were made into films and Broadway plays. One of her best friends was Tennessee Williams. She called him Ten, and she feuded with copycat Truman Capote for years. She married the same man, Reeves McCullers, twice, and is rumored to have chased after women. She was often drunk, chronically ill, and like so many of her era, she died young. If you've heard of her, you've probably heard some version of this. To tell her own story, a writer must make herself a character. To tell another person's story, a writer must make that person some version of herself, must find a way to inhabit her. This book takes place in the fluid distance between the writer and her subject, in the fashioning of a self in all its permutations on the page. Correspondence. I wasn't expecting love letters. The paper was brown with age and wrinkled at the edges. Anne-Marie's handwriting filled the page, bearing hard to the right and often spilling back up the left margin with last editions. I read through clear mylar sleeves, too nervous to remove the pages from their housings. April 10th, at night. Carson, child, my beloved, you know that leaving the day after tomorrow, feeling half afraid and proud, leaving behind me all I care for once again in a wave of love. I looked up at the rows of manuscript boxes that surrounded me, mind humming, face flushed. Did that mean what I thought it meant? What did she mean, love? Instinctively, I listened for anyone who might be coming. Hearing only the ticking of the sliding electric shelves, I read on. To Carson, Anne-Marie recalled talking as we did, you and I, at that lunchtime, you remember, at the corner near the Bedford Hotel with milk and bread and butter ages ago. 4 years before I visited the Georgia Archives housing Carson's transcribed therapy sessions, before I knew more of Carson than her name, I was an intern at the Harry Ransom Center, a giant collection of writers and artists' books on the University of Texas campus in Austin. The gig was a kind of coup. It got me out of teaching for 2 years while I was a graduate student, and it gave me unfettered access to the papers and belongings of major writers. On each day of my 2 years at the center, I came into the shared intern office and answered queries from scholars about their research from a stack of mail by the door. About half of them were about either David Foster Wallace or Norman Mailer. My favorite find was a series of letters one of Mailer's mistresses had written him with a salutation, summing up my own feelings. Dear American shithead. One day in early February 2012, a scholar wrote asking for letters between Anne-Marie Clark Schwarzenbach, whose name was utterly unfamiliar, and Carson McCullers, whose book titles had always struck a chord with me. The heart is a lonely hunter, like saying. But I haven't gotten around to reading any. Books seem to find me when I'm ready for them, or else I abandon them. I took the freight elevator down to the icy basement manuscript room, pulled the correspondence folder, it was 29.4, I still recall, and started reading it right there in the stacks. I found the letters at the tail end of the major slow-burning catastrophe of my 20s. Never quite breaking up with my first love, a woman from Texas I'd met our freshman year of college in Vermont after 6 positive years together. In my second year of a 6-year PhD program, I was already bored sick of academia. I didn't want to be a literary critic, couldn't stand the institutional hoops as I was jumping through them. And only 6 months into my internship, I could tell I wasn't cut out to be an archivist. I didn't have the patience, and I spent too much time trying to solve mysteries of my own creation. I got an email out of the blue from one of my professors admiring my writing, and I jumped at what felt like validation. The praise continued, along with a barrage of poems and pressure to sleep with him, which I did, unsure exactly how I got there. My 6-year relationship dissolved, and I moved out of our apartment. I was 25, and when I wasn't drunk on a porch smoking angry cigarettes with my friends, I was exquisitely alone for the first time in my life in a new, overpriced studio apartment I couldn't afford. The dishwasher was full of roaches. The roaches were judging me. I was perplexed by my own behavior. I didn't know if I wanted to date women. I never really had. My first love and I remained publicly roommates for all those years. But on the heels of manipulation, dating men seemed pretty dismal. Like most 25-year-olds, I couldn't figure out what came next. What came next was Carson. Thank you.
He's the author of All's Well. All's Well deals with the theater and topics of chronic illness and womanhood.
Thank you so much. Okay, let me see if I can do this. If I can read. No. Sir, can I just grab a book from there just to talk the book out? Sorry, I'm I'm going to read a little bit from the middle of All's Well. And All's Well, just for context, is about a theater teacher at a college who suffers from chronic pain that no one believes she has, and she is hell-bent on staging a student production of Shakespeare's All's Well that ends well, but the students are mutinous and they want Macbeth. So the scene that I'm going to read is a confrontation. She's been called into the dean's office about this, so she has to face the fire. When I enter the dean's office, I encounter not one, but three men, all in suits the same shade of gray, all sitting behind an executive desk. The dean in the middle, flanked by the president on one side, the vice president on the other. Varying degrees of hair loss, varying degrees of compensatory combing. 3 pairs of watery eyes regarding me with neutral expressions. 3 pairs of hairy hands clasped. A golden ring gleaming on each of their left hands. Just a friendly chat, Miranda. But I smell aftershave. I smell a witch hunt. Come in, the dean says to me now with dogged sunniness. The president and vice president smile coldly. I call them Bowtie and comb over respectively. Bowtie is, of course, wearing a bow tie, patterned today with little winged pigs. Comb-over's pate shines beneath the lights. Between them grins the dean, who is the fool, not even Shakespearean, a fool without the wit. Grace and I secretly call him Puffy Nips because of his propensity to wear a certain kind of thin turtleneck that leaves little to the imagination. Puffy Nips smiles at me reassuringly. This is not a trial, Miranda. You are not being burned at the stake. No. Just a friendly chat is all, am I right? He looks to the other 2 men who glare at me. Come in. Whoa, got quite a bit of a limp there. What happened? Knee sprain? My back. My hip and my back, actually. Ouch, he smiles. Well, come in, have a seat. I gaze at the flimsy plastic chair the dean is pointing to, which may as well be an Iron Maiden. If I sit in that ridiculous chair, I'll pay for it dearly. I may not be able to get back up, but I imagine asking these men if I can remain standing. I picture myself standing, casting my crooked shadow over them, all of them gazing up at my body, a lump of foul deformity. They'd think it was some dramatic strategy, a drama teacher's histrionics, my inherent need to make theater wherever I go. Miranda, everything okay? No, I think. My body is a black sky filled with bright stars of pain. Fine, I say. I sit. My leg cries out. Do they hear it? No. They're still gazing at me like all is well. Just a chat, Miranda, just a chat. The dean loves to remind me that he did some community theater in his time. Shakespeare, believe it or not. Oh yes, The Tempest. Have I read that one? He was Caliban. How he enjoyed being the monster. Best time of his life. And talk about a learning experience. In other words, Miranda, I'm not here to help you. So why don't I trust Puffy Nips? His blue eyes twinkling with cataracts. His office full of photos of himself in the mundane prose of familial New England life, because he always gives me the speech whenever he's about to propose a cut. Been trying to get a hold of you. You're not an easy one to reach. I was teaching. I am a teacher, I remind them. I had a class, then office hours, then another class, then rehearsal, but no one showed up. Silence. I accuse him with my gaze. The dean looks uncomfortable now. Some complaints have been made, Miranda, he says airily, about the choice of play this year. Apparently, it's not the one the students wanted to put on. Is that right? They actually wanted to put on another play, and they were in fact quite excited about it. But he doesn't already know the facts. Now remind me, he continues, as if he actually forgot. What a Caliban he must have been. Which play was it again? The one they wanted? Macbeth. Come over, Spitz. Right, Macbeth, Bowtie says. Oops, the dean says and winks at me hideously. Not supposed to say that name aloud, I think. Am I right? Curses things, doesn't it? Bad luck, isn't it? For a second, I see his true green reptilian skin shimmering beneath his thin white mask of a face. How many pills did I dry swallow before I came in here? I think that's just in the theater, Bowtie says. The dean tisks. Better safe than sorry, am I right? I know how much luck means to you theater people. Sure, Comover offers, giving me the sledgehammer of his smile. Need all the help you can get. Absolutely, the dean beams. Anyway, what we've heard is that you've insisted that they go in another direction. As their director, I interject. Their smiling, jokey faces grow grave. Excuse me? I'm the director. I led them in another direction. As their director. We exchange looks. I'm making my little stand. It's lame. It's easily swatted away. My attempt to stand up for myself when I can't even physically stand. What we've heard is that you've insisted on putting on another play, one they don't like at all. What is it called again? As You Like It? All's Well, I correct. Excuse me? All's Well That Ends Well. That's the name of the play. Never heard of it, Bowtie says, as if that settles it. I'm sure that's a play, Comover says, by Shakespeare, the dean clarifies. I think it was one of those ones that was written by other people, Bowtie. Didn't he have other people writing for him? Bacon, I think, Comover says. Francis Bacon, absolutely, the dean fills in, nodding. It's a play by Shakespeare, I say quietly, though I want to scream. One of the problem plays. And we're sure it's wonderful, the dean says. But here's the thing, Miranda, the students don't agree. Now, of course, it's not up to us to tell you how to do your job, Miranda, am I right? Of course not, Comover says. No, sir, says Bowtie. I mean, we're not theater people by any means, are we? Nope. And you are the director, after all, aren't you? Am I ask them. I'm really asking. They ignore this. But we also know that you, more than anyone, would want to see theater studies flourish again, am I right? Get a new stage. Get that platform you talked about with me once. The one that extends into the audience. Remember, what was that called again? I stare at his desk. A thrust, I whisper. Right, a thrust. We know, too, that you would hate to see the program shrink, Bowtie says. Dry up, Comover adds. Become obsolete, Bowtie finishes. They look at me meaningfully. Am I right? Puffy Hip says to me softly. I seduced this man when I got the job. Not physically, psychically. It was easy. Can I tell you how easy? How I fed off my audience, so long since I'd had an audience. How I shimmered with local glamour, radiated a non-threatening competence. And why would someone like you be looking to teach at our little college, he asked me, his final question. Only then did I falter. Only then did my smile slip. Sweat broke on my brow briefly. I thought, because my dreams have been killed. Because this is the beginning of my end. But I gathered myself, attempted to look thoughtful. I gazed at the dean's waiting expression, the ugly concrete wall behind him, the grim clock face. The theater has given me so much, I said and smiled. I just really love to get back now. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here, and let's have a huge round of applause for our There is so much more to come in the coming days. Please come and get one of these cards, which will have a schedule of all of our events. Please buy some books that you've gotten to hear from to learn more about these wonderful authors. And yeah, thanks for making this 10th anniversary start off so well. See you soon. If you buy a book, the first 3 people will get a shirt.
See you tomorrow, everyone.